again to another edition of Good Books Radio. I'm your host this week, Dr. John Cook, and with me today is Will Powers. Dr. Powers has been an executive consultant in the area of workforce development for over 30 years. His candid and pragmatic focus upon organizational leadership and communication systems has helped thousands of business owners and executives reduce the headaches and heartaches of managing to succeed. As he achieved an international reputation, he was in the unique and fortunate position of being able to focus intensively upon a small number of organizations each year, while frequently speaking to key organizations. He has worked, for example, with NASA, Girl Scouts of America, Weber Aircraft, Key Plastics, American Society for Training and Development, and Sparbanken and Kalmar in Sweden, included in his international resume. He's a business owner, consultant, and trainer. He is a full professor. Previously served as Department Chair, Associate Dean, and Acting Dean in the College of Communication at Texas Christian University. Now retired, but before he did that, I just have to say he was my mentor at North Texas when I did my doctorate there. And I know he's very knowledgeable. He's published about 300 books, articles, and papers. He served as a reviewer and editorial board for 6 academic journals, numerous awards and recognitions for teaching, service, and research. He's involved in community associations and activities. And that's a modest review of Dr. Will Powers. Will, welcome to the program.
Thank you, John. I appreciate being on.
Generally, we talk about a book or an e-book, and this time we're going to be talking about a series of e-publications, but those of you who are in education and training might find this a very useful conversation. Will, we're talking about your organization, Concept Keys Incorporated. You can access a lot of information online. You can also access the materials there. Now, my understanding of Concept Keys is that we deliver small chunks of information via email or some other means on a regular basis rather than delivering a 6-hour training course, which is what the traditional approach is. What's the rationale behind that?
Well, the factor is that we live in a world of information overload today. And most people, when they are being overloaded, they simply ignore it, or they act like they really got it, but they didn't, and then they will constantly be asking for clarification of the details months and months and months later. Mm-hmm. Part of the overload function is simply there's a larger number of important factors that people need to learn about and be able to use, and the size of the information overload that's provided by leaders and trainers and teachers is very, very large. Mm-hmm. Yet time plays a major role in this. And the time for people to study and understand and figure out how to use the information in a productive manner is still small. It hasn't changed over the years. And the time for presentation by the experts also has not changed. So what's happening now is these experts are jamming everything they can think will be helpful to their people into a very restricted time frame, and inevitably they produce an information overload situation.
Mm-hmm. And then they'll email them a follow-up PowerPoint with 20 slides on it, loaded up with more information, right? So this design is supposed to help us with that because we take it into smaller chunks, which people are better able to retain. And all of these programs that you have, and we'll talk about what those are in a moment, include a support manual and then the periodic chunks of information, which might be one a week or one a day, depending on how someone wants to manage the training. And there's a lot of flexibility in that. Can you talk a little bit about the programs and how they work?
Well, we have some programs that will simply stand alone as a type of a class of a program in itself. Those are what we call our public programs. Then we have private label programs where leaders and trainers and teachers can write their own content on our system. And then they can get the copyright on it, they can market it, they can sell it, whatever price they want, and then they buy the seats on our program with the key learning application system that I've developed after they've already had the money in their pocket. So there's very little financial risk there for anybody. Mm-hmm. The way it works is if you're a participant in the program, you would get a gentle reminder email, let's say every day, that it's going to be delivered. And it will simply say, hi, John, key number 3 is waiting for you. Click here. And you'll click on that link. You'll go to your own account at our website, and there will be a key to understanding a particular concept, and oftentimes it's a behavioral type of key, how to be more successful at this particular area. And that's at the top of a very, very brief micro lesson. Typically it's 4 bullet points and 2 or 3 sentences to a bullet point. It involves description, explanation, negative motivator, what happens to people when they don't do this, and a positive motivator, what happens to people most of the time when they do this. And then there's typically 3 or 4 food for thought questions, most of them being clickables off of a number base or something. And then there's 1 text box. What are you going to do to improve this in this area? Then there'll be 5 keys, typically, if they're delivered once a day. That would be every Friday. There's a quiz. Can you recognize the 5 keys you just got last week? When they're randomly embedded in a random pool of other keys from the world of keys. Mm-hmm. And then it goes on, and something that really is critical here. Then it comes up and it says, okay, John, here's the 5 keys you did get last week. Which one is most important for you? Mm-hmm. So you get self-selection there. Nobody's being a drill instructor here. Mm-hmm. They're allowing the person to decide what's really important. And then it asks them, what are you going to do to apply this next week? So you get self-determination on that person. And then the next week it starts out with, hi, John, last week you said key number 3 was most important and you were going to do this. How did that action plan turn out? So you get self-report. Mm-hmm. Self-selection, self-determination, self-report. Mm-hmm. And they're constantly reminded that their boss or their trainer or their teacher has access to all of their interaction on this program. And of course, as part of the continual improvement model that we hope organizations will move toward, we advise them strongly that the leadership becomes more of a mentor and less of a drill instructor. Mm-hmm. And they're really helping people to understand these things and use them productively, which can be done, as you mentioned, with the support manuals, which are filled with a variety of activities that have all been done somewhere. Mm-hmm. I've done them all. Mm-hmm. And they'll be able to select from those the activities that will work in their organizational culture that might not work in another organizational culture or classroom, whatever the case might be.
So you're talking about the support manual, and people may choose among those. They can even choose what keys they want to put into their program, can't they?
Well, that's the 3rd level. We call it a blended program. Mm-hmm. They can take any of our public programs, and they can select. Say some of these programs are 50 keys long, mm-hmm. And say they don't have that much time, so they want to just have 15 keys, have them delivered once a day, work day, and that would make it a 3-week program for the person. So they can go in there and they can select the 15 keys that they think is most important in their culture, in their industry, their organization, for their class. Doesn't matter. They select the keys, and then they tell me what those are, and then I give them some additional software, and they can then come in and they can add bullet points to those 4 in each of the micro lessons, and they can describe how that is important in their industry or in their projection of the future, whatever it might be. They can add additional information in there. They can't change anything in the actual micro lesson other than an occasional jargon word because we have copyrights on those, and authors maintain the rights to those copyrights. Mm-hmm.
So that you do have a bevy of authors in addition to yourself. You've written a number of these programs yourself, but you have people with PhDs, MBAs, law degrees who are writing programs as well. And then there's also the possibility of one writing an original program or an original training for you, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Every trainer can extend their training program without any more time commitment on their part. For as many keys as they want to describe relative to what they've just trained people in. Mm-hmm. Some trainers might have 4 or 5 different programs because they have 4 or 5 different training sessions, workshops, seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be that material was all covered in a 4-hour workshop session, and now that can be extended from that one-time information overload banger a little bit every day, for 15 days. And the potential for those people to actually understand that, to remember that material, and then to productively use it goes up dramatically. Mm-hmm. And the same thing operates in the educational environment. We've run over 4,000 students through this program, and they like it. The teachers like it. Mm-hmm. It's going very, very well.
So I have my own testimonial because when teaching a gender and communication class, I included one of the modules, the one about avoiding perceptions of sexual harassment. And the students found it easy to get their lessons done in addition to everything else they had to do in the class. So it was a great supplemental course as a piece of what I was teaching in my communication course.
Yeah, that's good to hear that, John. I think for the most part, in the educational environment, the teachers are really finding that the students are looking at these materials because they're provided online, and they only take 5 minutes to really help them to fully understand the material in a different way than is covered in a $140 textbook that's 19 chapters long and supplemented with the lecture model. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've actually had some research experiments done in which a professor divided his class up into 4 groups, and each group in the first half of the class had to write their own program over something to be covered in the second half of the group of the class. And then during the second half, each group had to take another team's program. Mm-hmm. And then there was testing that happened. And what was discovered is that the writing of the program produced significantly more learning, understanding, retention on classical exams than did the textbook and lecture model. Mm-hmm. Very clear.
Interesting. The research supports this. And speaking of that, when you talked about self-selection, I was thinking about my education in adult learning, and this applies adult learning very well. We both came across an article in Forbes magazine by a guy from Deloitte University who talked about 5 keys to training, or 5 concepts about training. You want to talk about those in relation to concept keys? Because I think that was really interesting.
Sure. He talks about 5 keys to building a learning organization. Mm-hmm. Now, that could be either in education or in this classic organizational setting. His first key is basically to remember that corporate learning is informal, not necessarily formal, and HR doesn't own it. So he says the key to success here is to create an environment that supports relatively rapid on-the-job learning. And our research indicates that organizations that develop training in small, easy-to-use chunks of content are making it easy to be found as needed. Mm-hmm. And that's what our system does as well. Then he goes on to discuss second key is to promote and reward expertise. And the fact that you should reward such expertise by giving people time to study and improve their skills, to publicize and promote the success of the experts. That's exactly what we recommend in our support manual for both teachers and workforce development people. The third key that he suggests is to unleash the power of experts. And since you know the experts are there in your organization already in some areas, let them share that information and make it available to others. And that's what they can do with our system. Every department head can write their own program on keys to success in our department. And that might be very different than the keys to success in a different department. So it helps. The experts are everywhere. And so we simply got to let people share what they've learned very easily. The fourth key is to demonstrate the value of formal training. And he goes on to say formal training has not gone away, and it still plays a huge role in career development and professional networking. And I agree absolutely completely. Mm-hmm. And that's what we promote is keeping the training. The trainers are critical to continual improvement in an organization. But let's help those trainers. Let's give them a communication tool, like what we offer here with Concept Keys. And I think that's really outstanding. Mm-hmm. And they go on to talk about the value of learning occurs after you make huge mistakes, and that these are the most important learning opportunities for a company. And we've seen that happen here recently with the whole Ebola thing. As that happened, organizations made mistakes, and they learned from those mistakes, and they're now making adjustments to everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the whole thing is to keep on learning from those mistakes, but then not just learning personally, but sharing that learning with other people. And that's what you can do with the key learning application system.
I see. Yeah, that's crucial in books that have been written about learning organizations. Team learning involves the communication, the sharing, and that's so critical, especially in the Ebola example that you gave. I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but on a couple of the programs that you wrote, I noted, and I was wondering if you could share some of the more interesting things that are illuminated in those training programs. One was communicating clearly, and the other was listening effectively. What kinds of things are taught in there, in those keys, however many keys there are?
Well, there's 50 keys in each area, because they are extraordinarily complex areas. Mm-hmm. They appear to be so simple to communicate clearly and listen effectively. But so many of the decisions that we humans make are made when we're 3 and 4 and 5 years old, about how to do things like walk. How do we carry on a conversation? What do we do with our eyes, our facial expressions, our hands when we're communicating with mom and dad, or what mom and dad do to us? Mm-hmm. And then we develop these as habits so that we don't have to think about how we're going to walk every time we get up to walk. We simply get up and we walk. Mm-hmm. And most of us have very different walking patterns. Only in the military do we come close to having the exact same walking pattern when we're marching. But the thing that happens is those decisions that we made when we were youngsters, when we're adults, may no longer be producing the same kind of outcome that they did when we were kids. So we need to adjust those elements. And sometimes it seems so simple, so easy. Key number 4 in listening effectively is stop talking. It sounds so simple, but I'll bet you every single person here listening to this knows somebody that really needs that key. They just need to shut up and listen to people. I had one of my intern students that was taking the program. He got up online, and his first reaction to key number 4 was, "This is silly. I don't understand what Dr. Powers is having us do here. Everybody knows this. You can't listen when you're talking." Mm-hmm. Well, this is stupid. That's what he said. And of course, it was on an online discussion group. Everybody avoided him. Nobody said anything. I didn't say anything. 3 weeks later, I get a phone call. He goes, "Dr. Powers, hi, this is Sam, stupid Sam from your internship plan. I am so sorry that I made that comment up there on the discussion group. Is it okay if I go up and apologize to everybody?" I said, "Sure, Sam, no problem. What made you change your mind?" He said, well, Dr. Powers, I've been watching my boss for the last 30 minutes now talking with a customer, and he just wouldn't shut up and listen to her. She had a problem, and she was trying to describe the problem, and he wouldn't let her get through it. She got angry. She picked up a glass ashtray. She hit him in the head with it. He's just bleeding. And then she rushed out of here, yelling at the top of her voice, I'll never do business with you again. Well, obviously, that if he had just stopped talking and listened effectively, he would have been so much above the ballpark. But those are the things I'm saying that we do, and we do it without really thinking. We just do it automatically. But by having been made aware of this in the Concept Keys program, a person is able to do more of a self-adjustment, especially if they're tied up with some of their friends and say they choose the most important key is to stop talking, and they have their friends to help them realize they're doing it. So every time that they go on and on and on, their friends are supposed to pat themselves on the top of their head or scrub their eyebrows, just as a signal that they're talking too much. Yeah. And so the person can learn that way without having it be a big demonstrative sort of thing.
That's interesting. I remember on some of the concept keys when my students were taking the avoiding the perception of sexual harassment training, a couple of times I said, these things are obvious. And I said, not to everyone. And I guess when you're in small chunks of information, there may be bits that are obvious to some and not others, but they need to look around and see how the world behaves, because this really is about positive change and skill improvement for an entire organization, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And they've been selecting programs to use in their organization. The two most popular programs so far, bearing in mind now you have a leader who's choosing these programs, the two most popular ones are listening effectively, because they want their workforce to listen better, and becoming a solution maker, not a problem maker. This is a special challenge, especially for college graduates. As they go out into the workplace, they've developed their expertise in a particular area, and they go out there and they see things, and they want to be able to help improve those things. But the way in which they present it, they become a problem maker for the leader, rather than becoming a solution maker. So what we have in there is a whole selection of elements that's going to help them become a much, much better solution maker, and being seen that way. And it will impact their whole communication style.
It's interesting because in school we don't teach much listening from K to 16. We just don't, and yet it's our most used skill. And becoming a solution maker is obviously what corporations want when they hire anybody.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, some of the things are things we just kind of look at and we go, what? Everybody knows that. Like on the becoming a solution maker, key number 7, the boss is the boss is the boss. Yeah, but you got to realize that the boss is the boss, and the boss has an extremely difficult and challenging job, and they must complete specific jobs that you don't even know about. And sometimes we have very positive bosses, and sometimes we have drill instructors when you're not in the military. And we have to learn that. And it isn't an issue of the fact that we have to like our boss or that we have to like the decisions, but we have to maintain and communicate respect for the boss and respect for the decisions. A lack of respect is never in your best interest. You become a problem maker. So respect always gives you an edge. And we had a really interesting thing here on this one. I had a former client of mine, a head football coach, came to me and asked if he could revise some of my material. So it was our first real experience with a blended program. He wanted to take my four programs and select from that the keys that he thought every coach would want their athletes to have. And he pulled 25 keys out of each of the programs. And then he changed them slightly. Instead of the boss is the boss is the boss, key number 7 becomes the coach is the coach is the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And there's challenges that way, and it doesn't matter what the gender is or what the sport is or whether you're talking about high school or professionals. These are the things that make a difference in an athlete's performance in an intriguing sort of way. And of course, in the college and high school situation, it's a way of taking athletics and having people understand that you're not only preparing these people to be better athletes and do better in school, but you're preparing them to do better when they get out of here as well. So it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So you have a section on the website that says who we help, but just to give folks a feel for the range, you've mentioned coaches and some businesses. We listed some of the nonprofit and profit organizations. The range of possibilities seems to me almost limitless. Churches do this. A.J. Foyt's organization does this. How wide-ranging are the typical types of clients that you've had on the CK?
Well, yeah, they go from organizations like NASA,
mm-hmm.
MEI Technologies, SAEC. These last two are staffing firms. They staff scientists and engineers.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken some of the programs and they like them. Then at the other end of things, in terms of quality, communication qualities, is we took through ESL employees from an airport, and they went through the same programs that the scientists and engineers went through.
Wow.
And they liked it just as well, because the material that we have in there, the text is written predominantly at a 6th grade readability level. Now, in some cases, the authors are not writing at that level because they're writing for people who clearly are going to be able to read English and understand English writing in a sophisticated way. Like college teachers, they're not going to write it at a 6th grade readability level.
Depends on the college.
Yeah. And some of them have more than just 4 bullet points in a micro lesson. We have one teacher that has 17 bullet points in the micro lesson. She got put into a summer class that was a 3-week summer class, and she just figured they weren't going to read the textbooks. So she just put more in there, but they would read this because it's online and the students relate to online
mm-hmm.
material better than they do to a $150 textbook these days.
Yeah, I think that's an important point for our contemporary students, and a lot of the work you've done is with those teachers and student learning manuals. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We've been talking about a unique kind of publication today, and you can find out more about it at www.conceptkeys.com. We've been talking with Dr. Will Powers. I'm your host, Dr. John Cook. I remind you that Good Books Radio airs 4 times a week on 88 FM, that we are underwritten by audiobooks.com. Try one of those for free. And if you don't catch us on the broadcast, you can find us on YouTube. Go to Good Books Radio Strong and Cook, and you'll find all of our most recent programs posted there. I'm your host, Dr. John Cook. Thanks for listening.